such a joy to see so many people here, faculty, staff, students, friends of Pepperdine, friends of Uganda. We're so thrilled you're all here, and we're particularly thrilled to have our very distinguished guests from Uganda. I am not going to introduce them at the moment because Jim will do that in the order that they speak. But I want to say a word about our relationship, this really remarkable relationship that this law school has with the judiciary and justice officials of Uganda. It reaches back, I think, nearly a decade now, and is one where, as President Benton put it this morning, we have been able to live out our very most important mission of living lives of service, purpose, and leadership. For it is not what we have brought to Uganda, it is what the Ugandan judiciary and that wonderful country have brought to us. So we thank you for that very special relationship that we have with you. It is at moments like this that we are reminded that the rule of law and justice, equal justice for all, must play out throughout this globe and perhaps beyond. And in our way, we join hands with Ugandan officials who believe, as we do, in those very important principles for civilized society. So we are deeply grateful for what you do for us. Now, today, you will witness a very ceremonial signing, and it may get a bit awkward at times because we've got a lot of signatories. But we have a lot of signatories because it means a lot. It means a lot to our Ugandan friends, and it means a lot to this law school. And I hope in particular that the students here will watch this not just as signing a paper, but rather will see it as a symbol of the life that you will lead as a lawyer or a judge, or wherever you find yourself in this legal profession. It's not just your job, but rather your calling to join hands in mutual support, mutual education, mutual understanding, mutual tolerance, all of the things it takes to be a world citizen dedicated to its highest ideals. So, to our friends from Uganda, our greatest thanks. We are enriched by your presence. We are ennobled by what you do. And we are befriended by who you are. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim Gash.
Thank you, Dean Taha, and thanks to everyone for coming today to engage in a conversation with the leaders of the Ugandan judiciary and justice law and order sector. As Dean Taha mentioned, this relationship is long and deep and is growing longer and deeper today as we sign an expanded Memorandum of Understanding with the judiciary. But before I introduce you to the individuals seated to my left and to my right, let me introduce you to the country of Uganda. Some of you know exactly where it is. I see many of you in the audience who have been there serving alongside the men and women next to me. But let me just show you where in Uganda. It's in East Africa. To the north is South Sudan. To the east is Kenya. To the south is Tanzania and Rwanda. And to the west is the Democratic Republic of Congo. Uganda itself was dubbed the Pearl of Africa by Winston Churchill after he visited and saw the beauty, not of the country itself, but of the people of Uganda. The largest lake in the world, Lake Victoria, is in Uganda, which is the source of the longest river in the world, the Nile. It's a place of beauty, it's a place of genuineness, and a place of love and friendship. And so we're here today to talk about what it is like to lead a country's judiciary and how a partnership with the university can be of some assistance in that regard. And so, as Dean Taha mentioned, I won't go through each of them right now and have you memorize them. I'm going to introduce each of our speakers as I ask them questions. And along the way, we'll see a little bit more of their country and some of the challenges that they're so ably meeting right now as leaders. So to my right, please welcome Justice Bart Katureebe, who is the Chief Justice of Uganda. Justice Katureebe, we're honored to have you here among us as our friend and as our colleague. Some of you may or may not know there have now been 4 Chief Justices since the Constitution was adopted in 1995. 3 of the 4 have visited Uganda. They've all visited Uganda. 3 of the 4 have been our guests here at Pepperdine. There have been 9 duly appointed Chief Justices since independence from Great Britain in 1962. Uganda has a common law legal system, as is ours, and the language of business and the courts is English, although there are many languages outside the capital city that are spoken. The Chief Justice grew up in the southwest portion of Uganda, and he told us earlier today that he met his first American in 1961 as an 11-year-old boy herding goats. Since that time, his illustrious career has included stints in Parliament, as Attorney General, and now as the Chief Justice. And so, Justice Katureebe, walk us through your career path from the time you went to law school to this point.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. This is my first time at Pepperdine, actually my first time on the west coast of the United States. So if I appear to be like a fish out of water. Yes, as you mentioned, I was born and grew up near Lake Edward on the extreme southwest there. I can see the hills of Democratic Republic of Congo from my house across the lake. And I went to law school 1971. I think I'm the first Chief Justice homegrown, the first Chief Justice that went to our local university, Makerere University, and the others came from Dar es Salaam and abroad. So from 1971 up to 74, I was a law school undergraduate. And then I went to the Law Development Center for the postgraduate bar course, 74, 75. And I started work April 75 in the Attorney General's office as a state attorney. And I stayed in the Attorney General's office for 8 years, rising to the rank of principal state attorney. So at the end of 1983, I thought I had risen as far as I could go in public service. So I resigned and went into private legal practice. And those of you who are here who have established private practice from scratch, you know it's not easy. You may not even have a meal on your desk. But I had a very loving and supportive wife, and she herself was already in public service. So I was able to establish myself, and within the 3-4 years, I had quite a name and a practice by my name. And in 1988, when I had done private practice for about 5 years, I got surprised. I went to my local club, a tennis club, have a drink in the evening, and a friend comes and says, congratulations, and have a beer on me. And I said, what are you congratulating me for? And he said, well, you don't know. Unless there is another Katureebe in town, you have just been appointed the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs. And no one had told me. I was not involved in politics. I was just a private legal practitioner, so I don't even know how my name had got across to the politicians. And I organized over that decision that night with my wife, and we resolved that I would reject the appointment. But by morning, friends were coming in and saying, you can't reject an appointment, because it was the first time someone from my region of the country had ever been appointed in government. So they say, you will be disappointing many of us. So I remember that day, I had a case in court. So I didn't know whether to proceed to the High Court or sit in the office and wait for some information from the President's office. So I called the then Attorney General and said, what do I do? And he said, well, you stay put on with your work. So I went and did my case. Next morning, I was preparing to go to court, and a call comes through from State House. Are you Mr. Katureebe? I said, yes. You are required at the State House for swearing in at 10 o'clock. How do I get to until it's 25 miles away? He said, stay where you are, we'll send you a vehicle. So I was off to State House and I was sworn in as a deputy minister. That was 25th of February 1988. And I thought it would be for maybe a year or two. I actually ended up staying in government for a total of 13 years, during which I served as a deputy minister of foreign affairs, industry, health, and ended up serving as Attorney General and Minister of Justice for the last 5 years. So that was my public service. And I also, during that period of time, got elected in Parliament, so I also served in Parliament as an elected member of Parliament. I was also an elected member of the Constituent Assembly that debated and passed the Constitution, actually even serving on the Legal Drafting Committee. So if there are mistakes of drafting you see in our Constitution, I was party to those mistakes. So at the end of that exercise, I decided 2001, I had no intention of making a further career in politics and in government. So I decided, at the end of the service as Attorney General, I told the President I wanted to go back to the law. And it was quite a tussle because I had to meet him 3 times to convince him to release me to go. Because people were telling me that I was arguably the most successful Attorney General, and the President didn't want me to go. I wanted to go back to my local profession. So I convinced him and started my legal practice all over again. It still goes, one of the outstanding law firms. And then after 5 years of that, in 2005, 10 years ago, the Law Society comes to me and say, we want to nominate you for the Supreme Court. And I said, no, I don't want the Supreme Court. But after so much haggling and the President coming in and so on, I eventually accepted and got appointed to the Supreme Court. And I've been on the Supreme Court for the last 10 years. And then 6 months ago, I was appointed Chief Justice. So that's my career path.
Before I turn to my left to ask the next gentleman a question, I want to make sure we introduce the Ugandan ambassador to the U.S. who is with us today, Her Excellency Olive Waneka. So thank you for coming. She flew in from Washington, D.C. to be with us today and to be part of Bob Goff and Danny DeWalt's class this afternoon. And speaking of Bob Goff, you can see all of them are wearing white medals. We just had a meeting with Bob, and Bob pinned white medals on them, so it's not an official thing, unless you're officially now having met Bob Goff. We also have some note cards. At time permitting, we'll have a chance to ask some questions to the justices, and so we're going to have you write those out, and we'll get those up. So if those can pass those out, we'll do that now, and we'll do that. But to my left, we have the Principal Judge of Uganda, Yorokamu Bamwine. Justice Bamwine is the head of the High Court of Uganda. The High Court is what we would call the trial level court. And so Justice Bamwine, tell us about the High Court. How many members of the High Court? How is it divided up? Who do you supervise?
Thank you so much. This is my 3rd time here. I was here in 2014 for plea bargaining, and now I'm here visiting. Good to be with you. I'm the head of the High Court of Uganda. That places me in the 3rd position in the judicial hierarchy. After the Chief Justice, who is here, the Deputy Chief Justice, I come 3rd. The judicial hierarchy. At the moment, I have 50 judges We have 50 judges of the High Court. We manage High Court in divisions. We have 8 divisions: commercial, family, land. Of course, I may lose count. International Crimes Division, and we call it anti-corruption, but here you would call it anti-corruption division. Anyway, 18 number. We also have several high court circuits sub-country. We have 13 of them, and I'm in charge of the High Court of Uganda. I manage it on behalf of the Chief Justice. That briefly is your principal judge. You know, Bamwine is difficult to remember. When I'm around, at times I'm called Bamwine, like Bam and wine. But just call me PJ. I love it.
On Monday, we were at the Los Angeles Superior Court for the day, meeting with lawyers and justices and meeting with the Public Defender's Office. And at that time, we were informed that the LA Superior Court, now keep in mind, Los Angeles has 4 million. Uganda has 35 million, same as California. There are 50 high court judges in the country. There are 240 criminal court judges in Los Angeles. So you want to talk about a heavy workload and people who can manage quite a bit with very few resources. They have big hands, big ideas, and big responsibilities that they're able to carry out with resources that we couldn't even imagine trying to do ourselves. And so they're to be congratulated for that. Two over to my right is Justice Kiriabwire. Our students call him Justice K. He is a member of the Court of Appeals for the Uganda Court of Appeals, and he's a member of the East African Court of Appeals. Justice K, please stand. I think Justice K, is this number 7? 7th trip to Peru?
Yes, number 7.
Number 7.
7 complete number.
That's right. But you need to keep coming. You can't stop at 7. Justice K was there at the beginning when the relationship was born. Chief Justice Adoki assigned Justice K to be the liaison to Pepperdine for this relationship. So Justice K, tell us how that came about and what you've seen in terms of evolution of the relationship between Pepperdine and the judiciary.
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon to you all. It's a pleasure to be back, and I'm glad to see very many people who I have interacted with over the years, students who have been to Uganda. I see one has a Uganda Cranes football jersey on. Well done. Stand up and so they know how the Uganda football team plays. Very good. Thank you for that. It makes me feel at home. Yes, it always started with a relationship coming out of Restore International, and all of you know Bob Gall. Who doesn't know Bob Gall? He is beyond life. It is such a blessing to the United States and to Uganda in the honorary council. He brought over some students to Uganda, I believe it was in 2006, and they came back and said, look, we want to have a relationship with the Ugandan judiciary. And so eventually students were lined up and they came. I think our first group came in towards the end of 2007, and they worked with the Court of Appeals in Uganda. And there was a little bit of, how do we handle these students? This is not moot court, this is real court. How do we work together with them? And one of the most amazing things I like to say and credit you all for is that they came with an open mind. They said, whatever you want us to do, we will be there to do it. And I don't know if you know this, Chief Justice, but the very first assignment that they were given was to help us organize our archives in the Court of Appeals. Now, when I talk about archives, I think some of you have walked down the staircase, somewhere on the right, or coming down here, you will see those archives. We're not talking electronic archives, we are talking paper archives, some of those dating back to the 60s. You open one of those files and the dust will get into your breathing system. You will not, you will not like that experience. But these young men and women, went in there, tagged them by year, and put them in shelves, making it possible for someone who would want to know how an appeal file looked in, let's say, 1966, to go quickly and get it. They were all on the floor. And you'll see those shelves as you come down. And this really made life so much easier. We're working on an electronic system now where you can punch in a computer and some of these things will come eventually. But then it was physical. If you wanted a file, it will take you a couple of days. They, by far, reduced the number of days you needed to be in those archives. I have been there, and I promise you, I get problems with allergies. I will not survive. But condos to those students, and we continued developing this in a very ad hoc system until 2008. The dean. Daniel's predecessor, Ken Starr, said, you come over and let's talk about this thing. He had a big vision, for this. I was kind of going with the flow, so I didn't have a strategy, but he wanted it to grow. And so I came over, and if you don't believe it, I've actually been part of faculty because I was given an office. It turned out to be Professor Jim Gash's office. He was out of town. So I got to use his computer. I took nothing out. And so we came up with a game plan that led to signing of a Memorandum of Understanding in 2009. And so this became a very formal relationship. And it has grown since then. I can say without any fear of doubt that more than 70, upwards of 75 students from Pepperdine have come and worked with the Ugandan courts, doing amazing things, incredible support to the Ugandan judiciary. And slowly it became clear that the judiciary and a university can have a very mutually beneficial relationship. Actually, one of the things I keep saying about Pepperdine is that Pepperdine has become our R&D, Research and Development Department. Seriously, two students, I remember Greer and Michelin Zamora, are the externs who came and were assigned to the criminal division of the trial courts. And they were totally amazed. They said, how can you try each and every case that comes to your courts? This is absolutely impossible. So they said, why don't you try plea bargaining? And said, what's plea bargaining? Plea bargaining, we try everybody. Every bad guy needs to have his day in court. And today, plea bargaining is part of the Ugandan judicial system, thanks to two students who came from this university. and it's now an award-winning intervention in the jail sector. The Justice Law and Order has recognized the Ugandan judiciary and Justice Bamwine for having introduced something that is going to make criminal justice so much more different, so much better than what it was before. And so when I say that Pepperdine has been R&D, I seriously mean this. In the area of mediation, we have court-next mediation, and we started with our own staff, but very quickly it became obvious that we didn't have enough staff to run the mediation program, so we wanted to start using attorneys. We didn't have attorneys in Uganda who were trained, so where would we get them from? So we came back to Pepperdine, and Pepperdine went and looked for part of their alumni, and John Napier came, and John Napier started the court-annexed mediation program using a court-accredited mediator. And many more have come since then. John, yeah, others have been in Uganda, and now probably we have in excess of, if we take all the courts that are doing that, we probably have in excess of 30 attorneys in Uganda who are walking in the footsteps of John Napier. So again, a very big intervention in Uganda. Now, it simply grows. You know, this relationship, looking back, it simply grows. You can't put a lid on it. Now, it has spread over into the entire justice system. Now we have students coming in and working with the Directorate of Public Prosecutions. I'll leave Mike to talk about that. We even had students working with the Uganda Capital Markets Authority. You know, these are the people who supervise our capital markets. They have been there. And so, Jim, cutting it over there, that is how it has grown. And today is a very important day and almost emotional for me to see that after walking this distance, you know, from being from babyhood, a good word, I don't know, from babyhood to adolescence, now this relationship is going to become an adult, and many more students are going to come. I'd almost forgotten to say that more than 15 judicial officers from Uganda have also come to Pepperdine and have experienced training in the Strauss Institute. So I myself was a beneficiary of a program at the Strauss Institute, mediating the litigated case. We've had them come over, and we've had very many who have come to do benchmarking tours. They have been to Ventura, they have been to the LA courts, as you have heard, and all of them have benefited from an understanding of how the American judicial system works and how they can get a little bit of that modified and let it work back home. Thank you.
One of the most rewarding parts of partnering with Ugandans is just watching them take off running in front. Once they have the tools to succeed, then they take it themselves and move it really quickly. And one of those who's doing that is the DPP, Mike Chibita. So, Justice Chibita, could you just kind of tell us where we're at in plea bargaining and what you see as kind of the future of plea bargaining?
Thank you, Jim. Allow me to stand up because in Uganda it's almost midnight. I fear that I might fall asleep as I talk, but it will be more difficult when I'm standing. Thank you for the opportunity. This is my third time here, and I've done a number of things while here. I see some of my tennis partners. I've played on your courts at 7 a.m. and at 9 p.m. So we are doing a lot more. But on plea bargaining, it's one of the things, as Geoffrey said in the clip, that has completely revolutionized the criminal justice system for the reduction in cost, the reduction in time, but also from our point of view, involvement of the victims of crime. Previously, we just needed them as witnesses, but now we have them involved because we have the victim impact statement. And we talk to them about what sentence would they like to get, and that kind, we engage them. And that's a big thing. So we've taken it on with the support of the judiciary. One of the things is I realize that at least in Uganda, I don't know about here, the judiciary is more credible than prosecution. The public doesn't trust prosecution very much, but they trust the judiciary. So having partnership with the judiciary in this has helped us very much to have credibility for the plea bargaining. Now we have more and more people wanting to come forward and do a plea bargain. And there was some kind of plea of guilt going on, but people would plead, is it called open? Plead open and thrust themselves at the mercy of the judicial officer. So when they are given an opportunity to say that, no, you can tell us what sentence you want to participate and make it a real bargain, I think they are very happy to do that. I think the future is very bright of plea bargain. More and more people, more and more institutions are coming on board. I had an opportunity, Andrew organized for us to talk at Makerere University and introduce plea bargain to them. Like most academicians, new things, they want to challenge them and so on. But what I told them is, as Director of Public Prosecutions, I don't have to do anything new. I can just sit and do my inbox, outbox, and I'll still get paid. But I guess the law is such a powerful instrument of social transformation that if you are just going to do the inbox, outbox, I think you'll be shorting yourself short and the system short. So I told them I cannot see something that will improve the system and I don't take it up. I know there may be mistakes, there will be criticisms, but as a leader, that's what you are supposed to do, to take leadership and introduce innovation. I'm glad that I was given the opportunity to participate in this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My next question is for the Chief Registrar Paul Gadenya. Paul, if you could stand. I know we're running a little short on time. You can go ahead and be seated, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance to be asked questions. You can sit now. Justice, His Worship, Paul Gadenya, is the Chief Registrar of Uganda, which means that he is in charge of the logistical aspects of making sure cases move through, the case management for the entire system. And when Paul became Chief Registrar, he inherited what we might call a substantial backlog of cases on the High Court, the Courts of Appeals, and the Supreme Court. So talk a little bit about the backlog and the ideas that you have to reduce the backlog.
Thank you very much. My name is Gadenya Paul. When I came to the judiciary about 1.5 years ago, the backlog in the courts was excessive, and I'll just take you through quick averages. We had 180,000 cases in the system. We could only do about 120,000 cases in the system. Most cases took more than 5 years. The particular land cases, 6 years. We even had some cases which was old, as 10 or 15 years. However, with the introduction of plea bargaining, we've been able to reduce the average timelines for these cases. In the place, the commercial court where Justice K was very active, we've seen timelines reduce from a year to 105 days for handling a commercial case. There's a lot of plea bargaining, not plea bargaining, but alternative dispute resolution. In terms of the capital cases. These are people who are charged with cases that attract a death penalty. The average time now for the cases to spend in the system have fallen from 24 months to 11 months. That means that somebody will get in at the beginning of January, and by the end of November, they'll be out of the system. Case disposal in the courts in the last 1 year or so has increased from 128,000 to 150,000. Our target was to increase the case disposal to 160,000. So you can see we're about 8,000 cases shy of the system. A number of strategies have been put in place to deal with case backlog. First is plea bargaining. Today we have more people waiting in the prisons asking for judges to come and do plea bargaining sessions. What we lack sometimes are the resources. For the first time, I have the judges, but I don't have the resources to do some of these cases. The second intervention that we are looking at is increasing greater use of alternative dispute resolution. While here, 93% of your cases get solved through ADR, the reverse is true in our jurisdiction. About 3% of the cases get resolved through alternative dispute resolution. Our mission is to, within the next 2-3 years, increase the number of cases resolved through ADR to about 20 to 30%. Our next intervention is to deepen our targets for judicial officers. When we came to the judiciary, people simply worked, there were no targets. It's like driving a car without a speed meter, so you never know the speed you are doing. However, with the introduction of the targets, in just 1 year, we have seen case disposal increase by more than 20%. Meaning that if we can intensify these efforts, we shall substantially change the justice system. The other intervention that we are putting in place is to empower the users of the system to be able to make use of the justice system. Because the system that we run in Uganda is borrowed from the United Kingdom. Common law, all the procedures. But Britain has since then moved away from the common law system. And so our intervention is to simplify laws, simplify procedures, open up these courts, provide public information, and make it possible for litigants to use their courts other than what we are having presently. The court is the most feared institution in Uganda. Our goal is to make the court the most loved institution in the country.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
We are short on time, but our goal is to eliminate case backlog so that the courts can add value to the lives of the many people who access our justice system. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question I have is for Madam Secretary Dorcas Okalani, the Secretary of the Judiciary. Madam Secretary, You can see that you're the only female up here, but you are not the only female in leadership position in Uganda. The Speaker of the Parliament is a woman. The last two district DCJs, Deputy Chief Justices, are women. Many other women lead the country, but that hasn't always been the case. So tell us about the evolution of women in leadership positions in Uganda.
Thank you very much. Can I call you chairperson?
You can call me Jimmy.
That is the first revolution of women in Uganda. They call them chairpersons, and even the men are chairpersons. Now, Uganda has evolved. One thing which Uganda had right from the beginning of colonialism on women is that if you excelled and you went to school, and you also qualified in, say, the legal fraternity as on the bench, or on the bench, you would get the same salary as a man, which is not the norm in other countries like Kenya. That one they had scored on that. But Uganda is a patrilineal society, and so the men, the cultures of the Africans, men are supposed to be on top. So if there was no little wealth in a family, the girl would be left at home and the boys would go to school. And that was a disadvantage to Uganda. But what has happened since 1986 is that the women have been put at the forefront. First of all, say, going to the tertiary institutions, in university, women were advantaged by being given 1.5% on top of the score they scored to go to university, and that increased the intake of women. When I talk about the lawyers, about now, as we talk, 2/3 of the legal profession to go to university are women. Actually, we are getting worried that women are overtaking men. When it came to the 1992, actually, I haven't told you about myself. I've worked in several institutions in government. I was on the other side of the executive before I came to the judiciary in 2008. I was in local government. And we made a law, and luckily enough, I was in the local council department. We were the secretaries to that law. And we pushed for 1/3 of women in local councils, and it was taken. And the constitution also came up and put 1/3 of the women. What has happened? Women have increased in numbers in all institutions. All our boards of directors in the corporate, 1/3 must, it's not optional, must be women. Now what happens there with the increasing education of women? You find that you may go to a board of directors and you have a board of directors of about 7, only 3 men and 5 women. That's what has happened. Women in leadership have become many, as he told you, the Speaker of Parliament, but we have also had a woman. You know, revenue collection is very difficult. But for the last 15 plus years, we had the MD, the Executive Director of the UNRWA, which collects revenue for our country, as a woman, and we increased our revenue by thousands and thousands of percentages. So you can see we have moved a lot. We have our main capital, KCCA. The Executive Director of the city is a woman. And believe you me, when students of Pepperdine came in 2008, when the men were at the helm, the city was very dirty. But now when it goes... Now, come to the judiciary. I came there in 2008. I found a judiciary with, of course, we had a deputy chief justice who was a woman, but the women didn't have the vigor to come into leadership. Now, what happened there is that the recruitment of magistrates was going on, and as we talk now, 55% of magistrates below, in the lower bench, are women. And they are doing quite well because they are turning over. Their output is high. You know, I believe women, when they are given leadership positions, they can really excel because maybe that factor that they were left behind, they want to excel and improve the leadership. When we talk about women in leadership, in my profession, I'm not a lawyer by training, but I'm a leader because I coordinate the judiciary. When I came to the judiciary in 2008, I was taken there as a permanent secretary to the judiciary, and an accounting officer. I found the judiciary was being given 28 billion. That is salary and money to work. We have pushed that. I've tried to mobilize and push the judiciary budget. Now we are talking of 93 billion. And I think we are going to go even further this year because we have the goodwill, and our new Chief Justice is great support in pushing the judiciary to do its work. When we talk about the reforms, we have to push the reforms with justification, and I make sure that I present the outputs of the judiciary so that we get up there and serve our people. I believe women who are in this congregation, you should pat your backs because you can do a lot and prove that humanity has to move together. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Just another across the table here to the ambassador to the United States from Uganda as a woman as well. I beg your indulgence for about 5 more minutes, and then we will sign the MOU. But I really want to make sure we have a chance for the Solicitor General of Uganda, Francis Atoke. Please stand to have a chance. The MOU we signed in 2009 was between the law school and the judiciary. The judiciary is one of the institutions of the larger JLOS, Justice, Law and Order sector, that the Solicitor General of Uganda, Francis, is the chairperson of. And so this next MOU is not just with the judiciary, but it's with the entire sector. So tell us, if you would, Solicitor General, what the JLOS sector is, who it consists of, and what your role is to lead that.
Thank you very much, Jim. Please permit me to stand, not because it is midnight in Uganda, but because I'm used to standing when I'm doing my work. I'm like Danny there, when he works, he stands, and I appreciate that. It keeps the blood flowing and the mind active. My name is Francis Atoke, Solicitor General. I've been in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs for 29 years now. And my role is the accounting officer of justice, law, and other sector, apart from my function is my mandate as the Solicitor General. I'm also the chair of the justice, law, and other sector, which comprises of 17 institutions that have come together in the administration of justice and maintenance of law and order and observance of human rights. One of the institutions is the Uganda Human Rights Commission, which is a constitutional body. We have the DPP, we have the judiciary, and the lead institution is Ministry of Justice. We do a lot of things, and what the Secretary did not tell you is that our budget has improved because I'm there. And before I joined the Ministry of Justice, I worked in the High Court. I was what equivalent of a research attorney to the late Justice, so there was the Justice of the Supreme Court. Then I joined the Administrator General and worked there for 26 years. I was coordinating this department that oversees the distribution and inheritance in Uganda. You know, like she told you, in the past, women in Uganda did not own property. And I think the world over, in Britain, women only started owning property under the Women's Property Rights of 1882. But in Uganda now we have improved, women now own property, and I used to arrest men who are trying to claim properties of women when I was still Administrator General, because I had the power to arrest. But coming back to the justice, law, and other sector, I coordinate the activities. The steering committee is headed by my Lord the Chief Justice, and I head the steering committee, and then there is another organ, the technical committee, that does other things. And I think they do the main work of the institution, of the sector. It is the first sector in Africa, and I think it is the most successful sector so far. And with the input of Pepperdine University, we will achieve miles. And if it was an airline, we'd be traveling free because of the miles that we have achieved. This is my second time in this university. I came here in June. Was it June or May? I think it was May. I was here in June, and we had a tour of the university. We met some friends here who have been to Uganda, and we appreciate the partnership. This MOU is about the partnership that has now matured into an adult. And adults now don't need guidance, but they need each other instead of being guided by their parents. I know of no person who has never been guided by parents. And one time when I was at college, I was told, for those of you who did literature, if you read Macbeth by Shakespeare, they said Macbeth died by somebody who was not born of a woman. And I wondered who was that? And it was Macduff. Macduff did not come through the natural birth canal, but he came out through a cesarean. And that is the only person that I know, and I so far known of, that has never been born by a woman, but came out of her. But otherwise, women are our mothers, and therefore we respect them. That's why our ambassador is there, we respect her, and the secretary is here. And in our laws, they say all in the constitution, there are provisions for respect, equality between men and women. In 2006, I attended the University of Aberdeen in Scotland. And when I went back, I found there are some sections of the Administrative General's Act that were nullified by the Constitutional Court because that was section 27 and the interpretation section, which says when a person dies and leaves a matrimonial home, the home belongs to a male heir. I didn't agree with it also myself, so I was happy when it was repealed. But that shows you the extent to which we respect our women, and that is the quality, and that is democracy that we have, that we envisage, and the kind of development that we think of when we sign this MOU. Thank you very much.
Now some of you have class that starts at 1:40. We're going to do a ceremonial exchange of flags, and then we're going to sign the MOU. So if you need to go somewhere, then feel free to step out. But we're nearing the end. The Chief Justice, if I could invite you up here, Dean Taha will be presenting the Chief Justice with a flag from Pepperdine, and the Chief Justice will be presenting Dean Taha a flag from Uganda, and then we will sign the MOU. Particularly during election next year in February.
Represents the black skin of the Ugandan people. The yellow is the sunshine that is abundant in Uganda all the year round. And the red signifies the red blood in our veins. And this bird here is one of the most peaceful birds. They call it the crested crane. It's a protected bird in Uganda. Nobody can kill it. It symbolizes the peace that our country hopes to enjoy in the world. That's why we have this one.
And what our flag is, the waves that will bring us to Uganda and bring you here.
So we can have the Chief Justice, the Principal Judge, Justice Katureebe and the Solicitor General will be the first group to sign. We'll take some pictures and then we'll have the second group sign. So just have a seat in one of these 4 chairs and then go ahead and sign, and then we'll just make sure that everybody has a chance to sign. Everybody needs to sign each copy. Move it to your right when you're done. It's going to take a few minutes because there's a lot of people to sign a lot of pages. So if you'd like to stick around and say hello afterward, you're welcome to do so. But otherwise, we're so grateful to you for coming and sharing this momentous day from everyone.